It's the Pete Sousa Show. Sports, Pete.
Nobody tells our stories better than our clients.
The difference is stark. I was rear-ended at a stop. I thought I was fine, and then once I got home, I realized it's a lot worse than I thought. I ended up having a ruptured disc. You say you're not hurting, and then an hour later, you're saying you're in all this pain. I just felt like most people would think that I was lying. And that's when I decided to call Daniel Stark. I owe a lot to Daniel Stark. They really got me what I deserved.
The difference is stark.
We definitely love our relationship and love Extraco. It's been an amazing experience.
They made the PPP process easier. They were reaching out to me saying, what can I do to help you? That made a huge difference because my stress level, when we shut down, to afterwards was night and day.
Our experience with Extraco has been phenomenal since the very beginning, so we love Extraco.
With Ease US makes studio quality voiceovers for your videos online in over 149 languages and dialects. Never been easier to create professional grade videos and voiceovers. Try it today at easeus.com. That's EASEUS.com. Ease US.
Hi, I'm Mitch, the co-founder of Cake, a sexual health and wellness company designed for today and designed for you. Yes, you. The entire product line can be found at hellocake.com, and it's also available in every Walmart near you.
Send money abroad in just a few steps with Remitly. Sign up with your email, enter an amount, choose how your loved ones receive the money, enter your recipient's information, select a payment method, hit send, and relax. Download the Remitly app today.
Tervis is all about staying hydrated. Each product is built to last and comes in endless designs to match your personality. Stay refreshed and express yourself with Tervis. Visit tervis.com today and find your perfect tumbler.
Looking for tickets to the hottest shows, games, and events? Ticket Liquidator is your one-stop shop for great prices, no hassles, and guaranteed tickets. Whether it's sports, theater, or concert, for the best seats at the biggest events, start with Ticket Liquidator today at ticketliquidator.com. Ticket Liquidator. The U-Like Air 3, launched in 2023, ushers in a new era of sapphire ice cooling technology, offering nearly painless hair reduction in just 3 weeks. That's ULIKE.com. U-Like.
It is the Pete Sousa Show. Look, I mean, you're not ready for this, and neither were we. We told you yesterday we're starting at 9:20 today or 9:15, so we're kind of on schedule for once. But we got Shehan Jeyarajah coming up, CBS Sports college football writer. I have so many things to ask him about. Usually, I'll literally sit down, etch out questions, type out questions. I just know exactly what I'm going to talk to him about. And I don't know that he has enough time, but he actually doesn't. He has somewhere to be at 10. He's got a real interview to do. But there's so much to cover this morning on the Pete Sousa Show. Of course, Scotty Springler on the wheels of steel. Chris Visser somewhere in Amsterdam. God bless him. I got an email from him this morning. I haven't read yet because I've been slammed, but it said something about Ron Jaworski. So that would be amazing, right? Come on now. Jaws.
That'd be fun.
Yeah, it'd be a lot of fun. Of course, we're presented by Slovacics. I may have said that already. Socorro Family Ford, Daniel Stark Injury Lawyers, First National Bank of Central Texas, Crawford Austin Properties. New college football playoff rankings are out. It's a disgrace what is going on with Notre Dame. And it's so frustrating to me because it's been happening all my life. As a kid who grew up in Philadelphia, right, southeastern Pennsylvania, every punk ass kid that went to a prep school, or every punk ass kid who went to school with me, right, at a Catholic high school, was all about Notre Dame, right? Because they were on NBC every Saturday and they were always really good. So it was like, it was just a bunch of front runners, as I saw it. And I honestly saw Notre Dame fans as entitled people that, you know, you just born on third base, thought you hit a triple. That's who the Notre Dame fan base was. A lot of people that like Notre Dame have no affiliation with the school. An Irish Catholic from Chicago would march around as though he was Newt Rockne or the immediate descendant of Newt Rockne, right? Because it was empowering to be a Notre Dame fan. They were kind of like the Yankees. And I understand it and respect it. And I know Notre Dame football has been amazing. The Lou Holtz years, I mean, just unbelievable. That was prime time in my life. And Lou Holtz is an amazing coach and an amazing guy by all accounts. But so this isn't a knock on the football that Notre Dame plays and produces, right? I mean, obviously the track record speaks for itself. On the field, wins, losses, national championships. I think their last title was 88. That was when the Tony Rice year, when they beat West Virginia, the Fiesta Bowl. But when I look at what's going on now and the Notre Dame hype train, right, and the bias that is so very real, right? Notre Dame this morning is now 9th in the college football playoff, okay? They're ahead of Miami. Miami beat them, remember? And they are 9th based on the quality of their losses, okay? There are the rankings right there. Notre Dame is 9th based on the quality of their losses, but behind them at 10, Alabama has 4 wins over teams 22 or better. So, Scotty, do you make any sense of this? And is there frustration for you around the Notre Dame bias?
Yeah, absolutely. You are spot on, dude. Like, and I think I was even talking probably on Mosley's show about the Notre Dame bias 2 weeks ago. I thought the initial rankings, I was like, they're pretty high for a team that's lost and the only 2 good teams they played. By the way, it's interesting that loss to Miami has seemingly elevated Miami, but not hurt Notre Dame. And like, just imagine, Pete, if Miami loses another game, and that's an if, they might win out, but they're not going to play for an ACC title. So if they lose another game, do we then knock Notre Dame down? Because it's that loss to Miami is going to keep looking worse and worse as we go along here. I'm just not sure, but you're spot on, dude. There's no way they should be ranked above Alabama. I wouldn't rank them above BYU if I were, voting. And at minimum.
I got one for you too.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to reiterate what Heather Dinich said on ESPN this morning, because it relates to the Big 12. If BYU and Texas Tech meet in that Big 12 title game and BYU wins, there's no way the committee is going to leave BYU out or Texas Tech out. So you've got 2 teams from the Big 12. And then now the Notre Dame bias has knocked Alabama out of the college football playoff pretty much as it stands today. Think about that. Like, that's garbage.
Or they'll leave out Tech. And that would be garbage too.
Oh, they won't. If they leave out Tech, dude.
I'm just saying, is it crazy to think that if that final, dude, I think that would be crazy, but is it crazy to think that if that final spot, if there's 2 spots and it's Notre Dame, Bama, Tech, that there's not a contingent of people in that room that are like, well, it's the Big 12. Let's just put in Alabama.
Oh, boy.
Like, and then we're really mad, bro, because Tech would beat Notre Dame by 17.
And I have Big 12. I'm sitting here with Big 12 bias, and it's really run rampant on my brain because that scenario I can't even imagine playing out.
Well, we should ask Shehan.
We'll ask Shehan. There's one more thing I want to get to before we get to Shehan. And this is a scenario where I'm like, kind of terrified about this. Ole Miss at 6, okay? With all the scuttlebutt around Lane Kiffin, and I love what we're doing. This is great. This is when, like, you know, I bitch about sports journalism on a local level. I did last week. This is when sports journalism is great. Lane Kiffin, you know, same thing we had here locally in Central Texas a couple years ago. Like, our good buddy Darby Brown is stalking. She's at the Bell County Airport where Scott Drew's family is flying to Kentucky without Scott Drew. And everybody was like, Scott Drew's going to leave for Kentucky because you check the flight registers, and they're doing that with Lane Kiffin's family. Apparently there's rumors that they went to LSU and to Florida.
Yep.
And all that stuff. Look, man, if you're Lane Kiffin, I get it. Like, that's what you do. He's doing his due diligence. And whatever Lane Kiffin does is college football. And I think he might stay because I've talked about this before. I think his sobriety plays a huge part in this. I think he's living life differently. I think he is not chasing like he was once before. I think he's got a comfort in his own skill and his own skin that he did not have prior to getting sober. I think he's got a connection with his family and his daughter, who's still at Ole Miss and has a ton of friends there that he has now that he did not have before. All that being said, this is business, right? I would think that Lane might stay 1 or 2 more years till his daughter is out of school and then go wherever he wants after that. That is like a gut instinct I have just because of his new way of life. Now, let's pretend that he does leave. And that's not a knock on him either, because again, this is a business. The only guy that I would be super pissed if he leaves is Kenny Dillingham, because he is, and I don't want to say sold us because he hasn't left yet, but he has told us that he's not chasing jobs anywhere, that he is so happy being in Tempe, a Tempe guy, an Arizona State guy. Like, that's what we've been told. So if he were to take a job somewhere else, I'd be like, come on, man, that's not cool, because he told us all this stuff. But, stranger things have happened. But if Lane Kiffin leaves Ole Miss and they are on the cusp of a college football playoff bid, do they not get in because he leaves and goes to a different school? Like, are we living in a world where that is possible? That if before the college football playoff comes out in that first weekend of December, if he announces, like, if this Egg Bowl deadline that we've heard about, right, that by next Friday, Lane has to announce what he's doing, right? If there's truth to that, and he announces after that game, I took the job at Florida, I took the job at LSU, right? And then the college football playoff committee takes that into consideration and leaves Ole Miss out of the college football playoff, I will tell you, it will be bonkers around the country, because the more and more we move into this new landscape of college football and we change directions as a sport, this is, we set a precedent almost every year. I think the big one was Florida State, right? Who was that starting quarterback, Scotty, that got hurt? Florida State starting quarterback got hurt before the 2023 college football playoff was.
I'm forgetting his name,
yeah.
But I
and
know
that was
exactly.
when we were 4 teams and they didn't get in.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
This would be even, and that was a huge deal. People went crazy about that. This would be an even bigger deal. If Lane Kiffin steps aside and takes another job, and Ole Miss doesn't get in the college football playoff, and it's rumored that that is a reason why, that would be a stick of dynamite to the college football playoff structure and to the sport in itself. I think that we would see reaction and quite possibly rulings put in place after a move like that would change things going forward. Because as much as this is so much fun, and look, man, we're going to talk to Shehan about all the head coaching openings. The reason we moved this call up or this show up is because I have calls with coaches this morning, USF coaches, right? Alex Golish, like, he's rumored for the Oklahoma State job. That's one of those things, like, during the broadcast, it's about celebrating UAB and USF and college football. So you don't get deep into those rumors, but you definitely mention, hey, this guy is a hot commodity, and Alex Golish. By the way, I watched his press conference yesterday. Boy, he is super cool. Like, I've just watched his games. I've never taken time to, like, dive into the kind of person he is, which you can see through watching a 25, 30-minute press conference. Like, wow, this guy has the whole package. He seems like a guy that can motivate, that is articulate, obviously, but he's genuine. And that being genuine is something really special. Shehan is here.
Yep.
I'm sure he looks great too.
He always looks good.
He always looks good. And he's got an appointment coming up, so we're not going to keep him long. There he is. Oh my gosh, Bulls fan. Okay.
Yeah, brought it out for the first day of this year. It's hey, we're not that bad this year.
Yeah, exactly. That's why you're repping, dude. Bulls fans, Shehan Jeyarajah from CBS Sports, college football writer, insider, all the things. Bulls fans can be seen maybe as front runners because of the Michael Jordan era, right? Because that's where a lot of it stems from. I'm not accusing you. I'm not even going to ask you to answer that question.
Well, I will answer that question. I was 4 years old when they won their last title. Obviously, I don't remember that. I became a fan of the team because I really loved Ben Gordon and
no kidding.
I was born in Chicago, didn't really grow up in sports all that much. They signed Ben Wallace, they had Ben Gordon, and then everything went to hell, and we've won one playoff series in the last 13 years. So nobody can accuse me of being a front runner when I've had to watch, Kobe White and Nikola Vucevic for the last 5 years.
That 04-05 team that you're talking, that was so much fun, dude.
Yeah.
That was so much fun.
When I started to fall in love. So the first jersey that I ever owned was a Luol Deng jersey of all things. So nobody can accuse me of being a front runner.
This guy's the real deal. My apologies right away. I was trying to put together, obviously now a clumsy segue into Notre Dame and the college football playoff and the entitled fan base, I am calling them, that Notre Dame has wherever they go, as long as I've been a fan of college football. The college football playoff rankings released last night, Notre Dame at 9, Alabama at 10, Miami at 13. Do you believe in a Notre Dame bias by this committee that overlooks some of the big wins Alabama has, a head-to-head win Miami had over Notre Dame, and is valuing Notre Dame's quality losses? Like, where do you weigh in on all that?
So I think the thing that they don't actually want to say is that the most powerful thing that Notre Dame has on its side is some of these advanced analytics stuff. If you look at like ESPN's SP Plus, they're number 5. And like the thing with that sort of rating is that it really takes into account being a dominant team. It really takes into account playing close games and winning by a lot when you win. And it doesn't penalize you that much for losing games, which again, like makes sense. This is one of many measures that we should be taking into account. Actually, another one, the reason that Utah is kind of higher than maybe we would expect as a 2-loss team that frankly doesn't have a signature win is also because they rate really highly in these advanced analytic systems. Now, a couple of years ago, I went and did the college football playoff mock selection committee. And one of the things that you kind of get to see is how they do their data visualization. And so they have what they call the 12 factors. They're kind of 12 factors that are correlated with winning, right? And you can compare teams side by side. It'll basically like show you, hey, here's teams that rate really well in this category. Here are teams that rate really poorly. And so the reality of what's happening is that Notre Dame rates well in those categories, whereas teams with better resumes, teams that might have, have the head-to-head win in the case of Miami, that doesn't necessarily come into play the same way. So, look, I think that when you start to kind of sit down and dig into Notre Dame, I think Notre Dame, since those first 2 games, and, again, the first 2 games are what they are. They were last-second losses. But, they played like a college football playoff caliber team. But where I think it is a little odd is when you have a team in BYU that has a better win than anything that Notre Dame has and fewer losses. And their only loss, by the way, was against a team that I think might be the 2nd or 3rd best team in the country. Yeah. And then on top of that, you have a team like Alabama, frankly, that, yes, has not very good losses, but also has 4 wins against top 25 opponents, including a road win at number 4. It's just a little hard for me to defend when, again, they're prioritizing one so much over the other.
So are you saying, God, Scotty, how thoughtful is Shehan? It's like he takes all the wind out of my first take sales here. So is it more metrics or mankind that leads to Notre Dame being ranked 9th, you think?
Yeah, I think that it's metrics. I think that, people sort of say like the eye test and put it on the film and stuff like that. And again, they've played really well against lesser opponents that they've played. And they do have 1 win against USC. I think USC, they're number 15. I think the gap between them and Utah at number 13 or 12. Like, to me, that's a pretty big gap. I don't think that those teams are comparable, frankly, but it gives them kind of the license to say, well, they've played X team, right? And so I think that for me, like, this is one of the interesting things too about kind of the playoff committee, and even if you want to get into like the advanced analytics world, is like there are some teams that are valued for like beating up on middling teams, and there are other teams that maybe aren't valued as much for actually beating those teams and not looking good doing it. And I think that there's different philosophies of this, and one of the cool things about the committee is that you do have a lot of different people in that room with a lot of different opinions. Frankly, it's one reason that I wish that there were fewer athletic directors in that room and more kind of varied football people, maybe people from personnel backgrounds, maybe people from coaching backgrounds, all this sort of stuff. But that is sort of what comes to the forefront is a lot of the time they're going to value things that look dominant to them and not necessarily evaluate as strongly what is the dominance, how should we be evaluating this.
All right, we talk about the Big 12. I got to ask you this question. It's almost contractual for me. Can they get 3 teams into the college football playoff? Is there any scenario where that plays out?
Well, let me start with this. And Scotty's going to hate that I'm saying this. This reminds me so much of 2014, where you have
so true. It's so true.
Big 12 teams that are clearly some of the best in the country. And I'll say this as well. I think that the committee, because of the reason that we just talked about with Notre Dame, the committee thinks that Utah is better than BYU. In my mind, I think that's clearly the case. But they also know we can't realistically put Utah ahead of BYU when they've got less losses and they also beat them. And by the way, also the loss that they had, at least on the scoreboard, was actually smaller than the one that Utah had. So I think that they're kind of splitting the difference and screwing over both teams. And, in 2014, I think the committee thought that TCU was probably a higher quality team than Baylor, but Baylor had the head-to-head win. So how do you resolve that? Well, you just kind of pull them both down at the same time. So I think that that's the first piece, is that both teams, I think, are a little bit at risk in a way that I think they should be. There's a reason that I bring up Notre Dame. There's a reason I bring up Alabama. Like, I think that BYU should be treated in a different way than they have been to this point. But look, okay, you don't need a ton to go wrong for everybody else to kind of fix all of this, right? If Alabama loses the Iron Bowl, that's a spot right there. Oklahoma still has to play Missouri, who might be getting their quarterback, Bo Perdula, back, and they have to play LSU. Now, again, diminished versions of both these teams, but again, Alabama had a 4% win probability to beat Alabama this past week, and Oklahoma managed to do it because of what they created with defense and special teams. That's not guaranteed to happen these next 2 games. So if those 2 teams lose, the reality is that BYU and Utah are the next 2 teams in line. And I think that BYU and Utah both have more in front of them than, let's say, Miami or Vanderbilt or any one of these teams. So I don't think they're going to get jumped. So if you have a couple of upsets happen in front of you among teams that actually are on the bubble, I mean, Notre Dame, they're probably not going to lose against their 2 lesser opponents that they played the last 2 weeks.
Syracuse and Stanford.
Exactly. And so, they're probably not going to lose. But, again, I think that you create a situation where these Big 12 teams are the first 2 in line if something happens, especially with what they have in front of them. But again, you need some of those things to go right.
John, this is more venting than anything else, but how is the committee and how does this process not value head-to-head games more so than these metrics? Like, BYU beat Utah. That should be game over. But you're telling me it's not.
Well, I think that what they've always said, right, is that if these teams are comparable, then we take into account head-to-head. And at this point, they've treated BYU and Utah as comparable, right?
Okay.
Because and that's why you have the head-to-head as applying. But, I wrote yesterday about Notre Dame and Miami. And again, I think that probably anybody at this point would say that Notre Dame is playing better football right now than Miami. And if they played again today, Notre Dame would probably be favored. But that's not really what we're asking here, right? It's a whole season that we're evaluating. It's 2 losses that we're evaluating. And so I think the big thing that kind of sits with me is I don't know how you can sit here and say that Notre Dame is clearly in a different tier than a Miami team with the same record. And I remember, again, going back and doing that mock selection committee. And one of the toughest things to figure out is there are these high variance teams, right? There are the teams that like punch high and then lose bad. I think when I did the committee a couple of years ago, maybe 2014, I think it was the 2014 one. And I think that Ole Miss like beat Alabama, but also had a loss to like Kentucky, right? So you kind of have these wild disparities, whereas then you have teams that maybe can't beat the top teams, but they beat all the pretty good teams. And so, that again, it gets kind of down to philosophy of which do you value more? And I think that when you don't have a clear answer, that's when you kind of go back to these analytics. So I think that in a situation where Miami kind of blows through the rest of their schedule and Notre Dame's in the mix, like it makes it much, much harder, in my opinion, to make the case that they're not comparable if you're starting to see these teams with a similar record, with similar quality of wins, end up in a similar position.
All right, Shehan Jeyarajah, you're all over it for us. Ole Miss. No, let's go to Texas Tech first. Texas Tech, a team like the back of your hand at this point. 5th right now in the rankings. I feel like they're in a weight class all by themselves, kind of separate from the Big 12, but like right below the Big 10 and SEC. I think they're that good. I think they're one of those teams that you could drop in the SEC and would probably only have 2, maybe 3 losses. What are your thoughts about Texas Tech and the chances that they can win the entire thing, the national championship?
So to be frank, I think you're underselling it. When you look at Texas Tech, again, the SP Plus analytics system is only 1, but Texas Tech ranks number 3 ahead of every team in the SEC at this point. So like, I think that Texas Tech not only would do all right in the SEC, and depth is kind of more the thing that you worry about, obviously, going through the SEC than the Big 12. But like, I think that they could beat anybody in the SEC week to week. Now, Ohio State kind of lives in a world all to itself. They haven't really been challenged, and so maybe that'll change when they are challenged. But they might just be miles better than everybody else. They might have 4 or 5 of the top 10 programs top 10 players rather in America. But like, I think that Texas Tech Indiana would be an awesome game. I think that Texas Tech, Texas A&M would be one that Texas Tech could certainly win. Texas Tech Georgia. I mean, look, we've seen Georgia kind of come along, but the reality is too, like early in the season, we've seen some of the struggles that their secondary has had, and Texas, for example, is just not the kind of team that has the passing game to be able to affect that. So I think that Texas Tech can hang with just about anybody. Now, again, we get, like I talked about, into the depth. I think that their top 22 is as good as anybody in college football, but they've got a quarterback who's a little bit hobbled by a leg injury. They've got an offensive line that's good, not great, but their defensive line also is the best, in my opinion, in all of college football. And actually, we just did our All-America call for the Football Writers Association of America. And while I won't, obviously get into what the results of those are, there are going to be many Texas Tech players on defense that are going to be in that conversation more than any other team in college football. I'll say that. So I think that ultimately, like, this is a team that can hang with the best, that can cause trouble against the best. And again, when you talk about winning 4 games in a row, like things happen, depth, matchups, all this sort of stuff. But if you ask me in a 1-game scenario, can they beat anybody? I think that Ohio State would be favored against them, but anybody else, I might take Texas Tech.
Shehan, can you refresh people's memory about how special the assemblance of this roster was? Because I think people from 30,000 feet look, oh, Cody Campbell, oil money, they went out and bought this team of all-stars. Truth be told, in college football, you have to identify the talent, right? Especially in this new landscape. And Texas Tech started that very early in the process, and you have to give them a ton of credit for identifying the talent across the nation, whether it was transfer portal, more than anything, transfer portal, to bring guys to Lubbock. Like, how important was that? Almost like a football ops crew that they had that traversed the nation and mined this talent and brought it to West Texas.
Well, let's start big picture, okay? Texas Tech is not the only team that spent money last offseason, and they're not the only staff that brought in a great recruiting class. Let's remember, LSU brought in a higher-rated recruiting class than Texas Tech did. Their coach got fired. Texas is a more expensive roster than Texas Tech. They're obviously out of the playoff right now. Penn State spent a lot to retain. They fired their coach. So there have been many cases of going out and spending big money, and it didn't go the way that it's going right now at Texas Tech. And you kind of alluded to it. So back in July 2024, Cody Campbell and a couple of boosters came to the table and said, we know that the rules are going to change in college football coming forward, and there's going to be more guardrails in place. So let's go all in on this season, the 2025 season, and this moment. So James Blanchard, the general manager over there, and his staff went through and identified essentially what are the biggest holes on our roster and who are some guys who hypothetically could enter the transfer portal. They put together a huge board, and most of those guys obviously didn't come to fruition. Some went to the NFL, some didn't pan out, whatever. But whenever the portal opened, they knew exactly where they needed to fill holes, offensive and defensive line chief among them, and they knew exactly which guys they wanted to go after. So when guys entered the portal, they had a whole game plan, they had a whole recruiting plan, they had a whole pitch, they knew exactly how they wanted to use these players, and that's how you get guys like Lee Hunter at defensive tackle. That's how you get guys David Bailey, obviously, at edge rusher. But the other thing is this: I think that people get a little. I think people think that Texas Tech was doing a 2024 Florida State. That's not the case. This was a team that was already going to be pretty good, but they knew that they had the opportunity to take it to a lead. It's not a coincidence, right? Their quarterback is a homegrown West Texas kid.
Yeah.
Their star linebacker, homegrown West Texas kid. Like, this is a staff, this is a program that knew what they had in addition to knowing that they needed to go out and get exactly what they did. So, there are a lot of programs that, again, hit the portal hard. There are a lot of programs that threw around a lot of money. But if you look, again, at some of these analytic ratings, Texas Tech has turned themselves into a team better than anybody else, frankly, who used the portal like that this offseason.
Shehan, this is like striking gold talking to you this morning. Couple more things before we let you go. Ole Miss, they're at 6 in the college football rankings right now. Obviously, the Lane Kiffin rumors are swirling. Does he stay or does he go?
Yeah, if I had to guess right now, I think he's going to go. I think he's let the thing drag out in ways that he, didn't need to. And I will say too, right? Like, this is something that we see in the SEC. This is something that we see is, agents trying to create as much leverage as possible and get as many concessions as possible. But I do think that when you start looking at, there was a report that Lane Kiffin actually flew to Baton Rouge to go and see it. So I think that he is starting to realize, hey, maybe I want to be somewhere else. There's long been speculation that he's coveted Florida specifically. He coached in the state of Florida at FAU. The mother of his children actually is the daughter, I believe, of a former Florida quarterback. So they have a lot of ties to that part of the country. And it's a place that to hear from other people that he's had his eye on for a while. So if you asked me 2-3 weeks ago, I think that he would have stayed at Ole Miss. But I mean, here's the reality too, right? Like Lane is always going to do what's best for Lane above all. And I think that he might think Florida is the place where he can both settle in a new place and also have a chance to maybe win bigger than he has.
If he were to leave before the college football playoff committee gets together and announces that final 12, do you think there is a potential that him leaving could actually bump Ole Miss out of the college football playoff? That could be a nightmare scenario for college football.
So I don't think so. Again, they're a team that's right now sitting at 10-1. They, again, they rate very well. They have decent wins. Now, let's say this: if they lose in kind of embarrassing fashion in the Egg Bowl against rival Mississippi State, then I think that changes the situation, right? Because, I mentioned that they have a couple of nice wins. I mean, that Oklahoma win is kind of the one that they're hanging their hat on. Some of their other wins, though, have not aged as well. Like LSU was a huge win for this program. Yeah. All of a sudden, it doesn't look like all that good a win for this program. I believe they have a Missouri win. Now, Missouri's back in the rankings, but, they obviously have been diminished without their starting quarterback. So I don't think that it would be at risk of knocking them out of the playoff. But if you lose that game against Mississippi State in a bad way and your resume starts looking a little weird, I mean, I think that, obviously the committee can take anything that they want into account. Like you said, I feel like it would be a really bad precedent to punish the kids for their coach leaving, but it's also a really bad precedent to be on the edge of the college football playoff and be actively and publicly flirting with jobs. I mean, one thing that drives me a little crazy, right? I tweeted about this yesterday. So the thing is, so mid-season, I picked Trinidad Chambliss, their quarterback, as my potential sort of dark horse Heisman guy, because his numbers are up there with anybody in the SEC right now. He's a D2 transfer who came off the bench and is now leading Ole Miss to their best season in program history. So I was like, well, obviously that guy's going to start to really blow up in the second half of the year. But here's the foolishness, right? I thought that anybody other than Lane Kiffin was allowed to have a story at Ole Miss right now. And that's just not reality. He sucks up all the oxygen in the room. And I think in a way that's actually diminished what they've done on the field.
Wow, great point. Okay, coaching stuff. One last thing on this and we'll let you go. I'm calling USF this weekend, right? So I have a coach's call with Alex Golish coming up in a little bit. Now I don't have the stones to ask him about what he's going to do, and that's really not my job as a play-by-play guy. But his name being kicked around for Oklahoma State. Who will get that Oklahoma State job in your estimation?
Yeah, they're going to have, of course, a decent amount of options available. And, what's interesting about this coaching market specifically is that, we're talking so much about, there's so many openings and all these, but one of the benefits, I think, especially frankly for Big 12 teams, is you're kind of a market unto yourself, right? Because the Texas and Oklahoma, and maybe you throw Arkansas under there, those programs compete against each other, but Oklahoma State isn't all that bothered by what happens at South Carolina, right? It doesn't necessarily matter to their candidate pool. So I think that the obvious call to make is Eric Morris. He's a West Texas guy. For people who don't know the geography, West Texas and Western Oklahoma, a lot of overlap there, very, very close geographically. He has coached in the state of Texas for a long time. Oklahoma State primarily recruits Texas. I think he would also be a very natural transition from Mike Gundy when you talk about the high-powered offenses, the quarterback development. It would kind of be getting back to some of what they know. The other thing, too, with Oklahoma State is that with Eric Morris, there's a bunch of guys on his roster who could come with him. Obviously, the quarterback, Drew Mestemaker, who's fantastic, but also a couple of receivers, also a running back, maybe even a couple of defenders who have stepped up. And, and I will say, too, people are going to look at their defense as a problem. I mean, they, from a rev share perspective, are way behind the rest of the American. It's kind of unbelievable what they're doing right now from a performance perspective. So I think he would be an obvious pick. Now, like you said, Alex Golish would be another one who I think would be a fantastic fit. They're kind of on the other end of the spectrum though too, where they are very fully funded when it comes to revenue sharing. They're actually working with more resource than all of the rest of the American at this point. But again, I think that Golish, he has some ties to the Midwest as well, and Oklahoma kind of sits in that weird little intersection of the two things, where he's done both South and North. I think that Ryan Silverfield at Memphis would be another obvious candidate. But for me, I think that especially as long as none of the Texas jobs open in a good timeline, and obviously I'm alluding to my alma mater.
What do you know there? Anything you've heard about Baylor and their future?
Yeah, so I'll say this. I think that everybody. So let's just start with the athletic director thing. So of course, he's under a self-imposed suspension for 28 days. My read of the situation and talking to people is that they are working on separating from each other, that eventually that will happen. But what that could look like is it could be looking to fire for cause, right? And that could be a process in the HR department and the legal department that can't just be done tomorrow. And here becomes the issue, right? Is that you can't start your next athletic director search in earnest until this is resolved. So let's say that it isn't resolved until December 14th. Well, then you have to start hiring an athletic director before you can even start hiring a football coach. And then on top of that, Dave Aranda's last game is on November 29th. And so, they're going to have to try to make an expedited decision at that point. Now, here's what I'll say, too, is that I think that with the way that Baylor is playing right now, which is obviously very poorly, I think that it's making it very hard to make the case to keep him around. I think that what they were hoping for and praying for, and probably still are, is that they win these last two games, that it's sort of treading water, and they can kind of push the search to next year when all these complications wouldn't be part of the equation. Well, I think that you look at the way Arizona's playing right now, they're 7-3. Look at the way that Houston's playing right now, they're 8-2. I think that Baylor very easily could lose both of those last two games after getting destroyed at home against Utah. And I just don't think that 5-7 is palatable to bring your head coach back. So it's a really complicated situation that I know that nobody in the athletic department wants to have to deal with this year because of all these complications. But the struggles of this team in a year where they were projected to contend for the Big 12 are ultimately just too much to ignore, especially for this fan base.
All right, absolutely. Last question, 60 seconds or less, because I know you got to go. Kenny Dillingham, would he leave Arizona State to go to LSU? And if not him, who gets that job?
LSU is probably the toughest for me to try to call on the board, right? Because I don't think that they're going to consider John Stonewall as much as they should, because I think that there's some elitism for hiring the Tulane coach at LSU. But, again, I also think that Lane probably will pick Florida, even though obviously LSU is a great opportunity too. I don't think that Kenny Dillingham's going to leave, at least at this moment. I mean, he's been very outspoken about the fact that he loves where he's at. His family all lives by him. He has the opportunity to accomplish some stuff. But, they're going to make, I think, a very strong case to give him a chance. Another coach to keep an eye on would be Eli Drinkwitz over at Missouri. He's done a tremendous job these past 2 or 3 years. He's been tied to Florida in the past. And he would, I think, be somebody who would make a lot of sense if you went to LSU.
Shehan, I got you in a headlock. I could keep you here all day, man. Thank you so much, dude. I really appreciate it. Make sure everybody listening, watching, checks out Shehan Jeyarajah, CBS Sports, college football writer. Thank you so much, dude.
Thank you for having me.
You got it, brother. Take it easy. Shehan Jeyarajah. I mean, I don't want to do like the Pat McAfee where you get up and clap, but like at least let me sit down. I mean, it's like that is as good as it gets, dude. And
he's the best at what he does, bro.
He is amazing, dude. And the fact that he's got roots to us here is so cool. I got a chance to chat with him. He came, and this is a guy, he's just a sports fan. He came to the Baylor men's basketball game against Tarleton on Friday night, and I caught up with him there, and we were just chatting. I made sure to press him. I was like, "Are you writing a story? What are you doing here?" He was like, "No, I swear, I'm just here. I've not seen Foster."
He actually got to come be a Baylor fan.
Yeah.
Root for his school.
What were your takeaways from that enlightening convo? Anything immediate?
Man, I think I'm going back to the playoff thing. I don't think he thinks the Big 12 gets 3 teams in.
Yeah.
I know he said there's a lot that can happen, but it's not like he was skeptical of that. Found it interesting. He's like, well, the committee clearly thinks Utah is better than BYU. And I liked your follow-up of like, how?
Yeah.
like how? Look at the game against Texas Tech as a mutual opponent. Look at the head-to-head. I don't know how you do that.
I struggle with that.
I will say, going back to something we were talking about right before Shehan came on, we did get a comment right when Shehan came on. L. Weiss TTU. Hope I said that right.
Yeah.
As a Tech alum, I am convinced we will be left out if we lose the conference championship.
Jesus,
game.
I don't think so.
Which is what I said, man. I
no.
Everyone in this room hates that idea.
And Shehan just said that they could beat anybody. He said they'd be favored against anybody.
So Shehan agrees with us. I mean, I agree with y'all.
Honestly, if that were to happen, I would be as shocked. And I would be gobsmacked, right? That's one of my favorite terms for just absolute shock. I thought it was godsmacked until like my brother corrected me 2 years ago. So that's like, that's my education for you shining through. No knock on Richmond, but I don't think there's any way that happens. That would be malpractice by the committee. That would, and I'm telling you that like the Texas Tech following and the juice that fan base has and all of Lubbock has. And also, dude, money talks, man. I don't think you can mess with these guys. I believe that, and I know Tech fans have that chip on their shoulder, which is one of the reasons they're so cool, in my opinion, because they are the least thing. I started talking about Notre Dame being entitled. You Texas Tech fans are not entitled. They're just effing awesome, right? I believe that. They really do. And when you talk about everybody has that, right? Like that the PTSD, for lack of a better term, because this is not like a heavy emotional situation, or maybe it is. But I think Texas Tech fans are blinded by the past and some of the struggles that the football team has and the fan base has endured. I do not think there's any chance that happens. I think that if BYU were to beat Texas Tech in the conference championship game, which, by the way, I don't think they would. I think Texas Tech is just a better football team head-to-head. But if BYU were to win, the committee would begrudgingly put 2 Big 12 teams in there, and that is more of a BYU situation screwing up the party and positive for the Big 12 as it would be a Texas Tech loss. And I'm telling you, dude, if that were to happen, that would be a huge deal. And maybe I'm seeing it right through my own like Prisoner Pete glasses because of how much we talk about the Big 12 here in Texas Tech. But again, Shehan has a pretty clean perspective. And he just said that outside of Ohio State, he doesn't know that anybody would be favored over Texas Tech in the college football playoff. All right, we're going to take a quick break, come back, wrap it up in the next 10 minutes. The Pete Sousa Show presented by Slovaceks. Thank you so much, Shehan. That was amazing.
Bubble allows you to make it real and for it to actually work. So I feel like Bubble bridges that gap and being able to give people the opportunity to make their ideas come to life really quickly too. I love that I can sit down and build something the way that I think it should be built and have the control over it.
Bubble turns ideas into fully scalable apps. Try Bubble today.
Hi, I'm Jo from Face Theory. You're going to want to have a specific goal for your skincare routine. What do you want to achieve? Active ingredients are really strong, and if you're using too many at once, your skin can get overwhelmed. Don't overspend on products. Choose products that have scientific research behind them. At Face Theory, if you're not happy with a product, just say so, just give us a shout and we'll give you your money back, no problem.
I know you're gonna love this Kodak Dot Plus printer. You guys just connect it to your smartphone and then you're gonna use the Kodak Photo Print app. It's going to print you a 4x6 photo. I am just in awe. I love how these turned out. Also, the printer comes with a free cartridge of 10 photo sheets. I can assure you, you are going to love this printer as much as my family has. You guys have to check it out for yourself.
Streamline event and appointment booking with Amelia's sleek, modern, and fully customizable booking forms. Tailor the colors, fonts, and design to match your brand and seamlessly integrate with your WordPress website. Whether it's for events or appointments, Amelia makes booking simple, stylish, and perfectly aligned with your business. Enhance your booking experience today at WPAmelia.com. That's WPAMELIA.com. Amelia.
When you learn a language with Babbel, you start a journey that takes you further and further. Anytime and anywhere you wish. It's easy and fun. Broadens your horizons and keeps your brain fit. A journey into new thoughts, new cultures, new adventures. So what are you waiting for? Start your journey with Babbel now. Go to babbel.com or download the app.
BadCreditLoans.com is a pioneering service provider that has carved a reputation in the financial industry for its dedication to helping individuals with bad credit secure loans. By making timely repayments, borrowers can gradually repair their credit history, thereby increasing their chances of securing better loan terms in the future. BadCreditLoans.com serves as a beacon of hope for those with bad credit. Simple, fast, and reliable loan application process. And its commitment to responsible borrowing makes it a trusted partner.
Serving Central Texas since 1889, TFNB Your Bank for Life takes pride in being more than a bank. At TFNB, we remain committed to these principles. If you value them too, come join us. TFNB, Your Bank for Life.
Football is back, and Underdog is the best place to make picks and win money all season long. Playing on Underdog is easy. Just pick whether your favorite players will go higher or lower on stats like touchdowns, receiving yards, interceptions, and more. Get your picks right and you can win up to 5,000 times your cash. You can play with as little as $1. Download the app today and sign up with promo code Sousa to score $50 in bonus funds when you play your first $5. That's promo code Sousa. That's SOUSA. Millions of fans have already won billions making picks on Underdog. Will you be next? Underdog. Make picks. Win money.
Must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Arizona, Massachusetts, and Virginia, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. See assets.underdogfantasy.com/web/play-and-get-terms_DFS_.html for details. Offer not valid in Maryland, Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. In New York, call the 24/7 HOPE line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. That's 467-369.
Oh, yeah. Pete Sousa Show. Scotty Swingler here with you. Underdog. I lost last night, Pete. I made 4 NBA picks. I went 2 for 4. So the flex couldn't even save me. Disappointed. But you know what's great about Underdog? You can always play again the next day, baby. I got some NBA picks for tonight. Here's what we're looking at. Give me Kevin Durant. Again, you guys know I love this. And this is, by the way, the pick. One of the picks I got right last night was when I did this. When you've got these superstars who can do everything on the court and you can combo points, rebounds, and assists, like that really gives you a lot of wiggle room to get this right. So last night I got it right with Luka. Let me get it tonight. Kevin Durant higher than 34.5 points plus rebounds plus assists for the Rockets. Steph Curry higher than 38.5 points plus rebounds plus assists for the Warriors. By the way, Steph quietly like on a roll right now, playing excellent basketball. He was also excellent. Did you see him on LeBron James' podcast, Pete?
No, I didn't.
You know, he's still doing that podcast, Mind the Game, and it's Steve Nash co-hosting with him now, which I've told you before, really Steve Nash was my favorite player growing up. I love him, so that's a great. And then VJ Edgecombe, man, give me higher than 1.5 3-pointers made. That guy has really found his shot in the NBA in a way he never really did at Baylor, for being honest. VJ going to hit some 3 balls tonight for Philly. Sign up using that promo code Sousa and play with us on Underdog.
All right, let's get to one or two more things. And in a sea of like college football news, Tim McMahon, Dallas Morning News fame, Matt Mosley would tell you that he mentored Tim McMahon, which I believe because Mosley is a superstar journalist. But Mosley will be quick to tell you that when McMahon's name comes up. He wrote an amazing story that is up on ESPN now about the Mavs and this transition of power that has gone back and forth and involves Mark Cuban. That apparently, I mean, it is. I'll just give some Cliff's notes and people can go read it. It's up on ESPN now on the homepage. But it talks about the fact that when Cuban, when the Dumonts bought the team at the time it was the year they made the finals, and the team was on the road, I think, at Cleveland at the time, and in front of Nico Harrison and everybody. Cuban walked into the locker room in front of the support staff and the team and was like, look, nothing's going to change. I'm still the guy. And Nico took great offense to that. And, Nico was just basically one source on the team or working for the team said, Nico was just like, dude, I'm sick of Mark, like being around and flexing his muscle because, anytime there's a microphone around, Mark Cuban will talk. And there is some truth to that. But apparently Nico really once the Dumonts took control, who are now the owners of the Mavericks or the governor, whatever you want to call it. He really was kind of manipulating and maneuvering and playing the Dumonts, as it is illustrated in this article. And Mark was really muscled out by Nico Harrison. Well, this recent ouster of Nico basically was apparently part of a coup that was put together by Mark Cuban. Now, Nico was, his own worst enemy, the way that all went down. I don't need to rehash any of that. But it now seems like, it doesn't seem like, Mark Cuban is now back on the cabinet as far as decision-making in basketball is concerned with the Dallas Mavericks upon the ouster of Nico Harrison. And now the Mavs are probably going to look to trade Anthony Davis, right, this injury-plagued guy, to really to hone in on Cooper Flagg and the future of the team. So what a freaking roller coaster ride for Mavericks fans. Like, we're the worst team. We hate our GM. We lost the greatest player in Mavs history, potentially. Well, Dirk, but you get my point. And, and now, okay, then we win the lottery and all of a sudden there's like people that are NBA prognosticators that are supposed to know stuff that are like, the Mavs could actually go to the finals this year with the team that they have. And now, of course, same old stuff. Anthony Davis, the guy can't. He's just a paper tiger, man. I'm sorry. I am so my one thing about I am not qualified to be a general manager in any sport. But like, I don't know how many times I've seen teams trade for guys who are always hurt and expect something to change, and nothing changes, dude. And that's what you got with Anthony Davis. I saw a video and it was like the Mavericks leaving. Like it was Instagram, like it was a joke, right? It was like AI, and it showed the Mavericks players pulling out of the team parking lot, and it was basically like illustrating this is what kind of car they drive. So they'd say like show Kyrie Irving, and it'd be like this souped up like whatever Phantom or whatever. I don't even know. Like, I'm not a car guy, but you get the idea. Like a Rolls Royce pulls out, like that's Cooper Flag, and then an ambulance leaves the parking lot, and they say that's Anthony Davis, and like that is the Anthony Davis track record. He was so amazing at Kentucky and amazing with the Pelicans, and he helped the Lakers win a title. But come on, man. It's enough already with that nonsense. And that was a horrible trade. Not only because it was a horrible trade, but because Anthony Davis is never healthy. That's a joke. And then one more thing I wanted to touch on before we get out of here, because I got to go. We all got to go. Okay, breaking news. This is as of 8 minutes ago. Shadur Sanders is going to start. Interesting. The Cleveland Browns, this is as reported by ESPN just now. The Cleveland Browns will start Shadur Sanders at quarterback in Sunday's road game against the Las Vegas Raiders. Head coach Kevin Stefanski announced Wednesday, as Dylan Gabriel remains in the NFL's concussion protocol. Okay. Look, there was a moment on First Take 2 days ago. And the reason I address this is because it's just complete rubbish. And where Cam Newton was on the record, and he actually did a decent job. When Cam Newton talks, I listen. All the, the pomp and circumstance and the top hats and the, he dresses over the top. Whatever, that's his style. And it's actually kind of cool. I like Cam Newton, right? But I did not appreciate what he had to say the other morning. It's just a disagreement that he said that Kevin Stefanski wants Shadur Sanders to fail. That, to me, is asinine. And, he talks about the fact that by not giving Shadur first-team reps, right, during the week as the backup, that Shadur, when he gets put into that game against Baltimore on Sunday, was set up to fail. And, when Cam was the quarterback in Carolina, I forget who their backup was. It was Matt something. He was there forever. And he said that, that guy would always get at least 12 reps with the first team during practices. So he would be able to be ready if called upon to go in. Like, look, man, that's your situation. And Cam can shed light and add experience to his opinion like almost no one else can, right? There's very few guys who won an MVP in the National Football League, I just said National Football League, who are able to give opinions on national television. Cam is one of them. So look, man, I'm listening. I respect Cam Newton, but that's a shitty thing to say about Kevin Stefanski on national television. And it's almost, you could see it as a race thing, which makes it even more of a bummer. Like Kevin Stefanski wants the Cleveland Browns to do well. And oh, by the way, they'd better, or he's going to get fired. So it doesn't matter who's playing quarterback. And it has nothing to do with his personal opinion of, if Shadur Sanders is a complete jackass, but Kevin Stefanski's not a dumbass, like he knows that Shadur is a play away from being the Browns starting quarterback. This is when Dylan Gabriel is a starter. So you want to do everything everything possible to make him ready. And you certainly don't want to do anything to make him deficient. And if you look around the league at backups, they don't take a ton of reps with the first team, if any, during the week usually. I mean, it goes back to the old Tom Moore saying when he was the offensive coordinator for the Indianapolis Colts. And the question was asked of him, why don't you give anybody else but Peyton Manning snaps in practice? Because he would say, if Peyton Manning's hurt, we're effed. So why even bother? And nobody hopped on Tom Moore's ass about that. And that's sort of true, right? Like, and again, that's a little maybe a little aggressive, but you get my point. Like, this has been going on for decades. And so for Cam Newton to say that just absolutely sucks. And the reason it sucks is because of the power that Cam Newton has. And when you wield that power for crappy opinions like that can come back on somebody like Kevin Stefanski personally, who, oh, by the way, we're from the same neighborhood and I work for his dad at the Sixers. His dad was actually part of the regime that ended up eliminating my position because I was terrible at my job. I don't get mad at Kevin Stefanski for that. In fact, I appreciate his dad and Mike Preston and the powers that be at the Sixers doing that for me, because it helped me realize that I was living like a moron and I was an alcoholic and I needed help. It took me a little time after that, but I could have an axe to grind with the Stefanskis, but I don't, because I'm not a complete moron. So Cam Newton, that was garbage, and I don't like seeing people wield their power for darkness. And I don't think Cam's a dark figure, but I think that opinion sucked. And maybe I believe that's how he feels too, but I would disagree with him. And like my boy Mad Dog Russo said yesterday, I did hear him on the radio saying how he would disagree with Cam Newton on that. And he said, I would like to think, if I was on set, because he's on set this morning on First Take, he's like, I would like to think if he said that in front of me, I would have the courage to disagree with him and call him out. Because I'd like to think. I don't know that I would, because at the end of the day, it is Cam Newton, right? And he's sitting right there, and he's like this giant man with all this energy and charisma. I'd like to think that I do the same thing, but I have no idea. All right, we'll be back tomorrow. The Pete Sousa Show, rocking and rolling. Thank you so much. We started early today, and Shehan Jeyarajah was amazing. If you missed it, we'll have that up on the Pete Sousa Show's YouTube page. Check out that YouTube page. There's a lot of great stuff up there from this week and weeks past. The interview we did yesterday is up there. It was really illuminating with Glenn Parker. Also put up his reaction to Sam Levitt possibly transferring. And we previewed BYU Cincinnati, all kinds of good stuff up there. So check it out. And thanks so much for watching. We will be back with you tomorrow.
It's the Pete Sousa Show. Sports.
We definitely love our relationship and love Extraco. It's been an amazing experience.
They made the PPP process easier. They were reaching out to me saying, what can I do to help you? That made a huge difference, because my stress level, when we shut down, to afterwards was night and day.
Our experience with Extraco has been phenomenal since the very beginning, so we love Extraco.
Show. Sports.
Nobody tells our stories better than our clients.
The difference is stark. I was rear-ended at 70 miles an hour. I was injured, had a concussion. The insurance company, they delayed. They were playing games from the initial conversation. They weren't going to help me. The biggest thing I learned through this is that you can't go through this alone. I called Daniel Stark. They were going to help me, and everything was going to be all right. Daniel Stark got me 10 times the insurance company offered.
The difference is stark.
Show. Sports.
Our professionals are not only experts in managing urgent concerns, but also in providing top-notch preventative health care. We're proud to connect pet owners to a vast network of licensed veterinary professionals, ready to address any immediate concerns. Book your first appointment today.
Nalgene Outdoor has been your trusted companion, fueling adventures and helping protect the planet. We're committed to reducing waste, improving access to clean water, and providing simple, safe, and sustainable products for you and your family. NALGENE.com. We are Rogue Media Sports.